first I'd like to thank Abby and Gundy for this opportunity and for what they've created here in Colorado Springs. This is the most amazing space to show in. They're the most amazing women to work with. And they've created spaces that, as artists, we feel comfortable creating work that comes from a vulnerable place inside. And there's not a lot of places to show that and to present it. So thank you. I thought I'd kind of break this up into two pieces. How many people in here are artists? A lot of you. Okay. Okay, well, we'll start with the non-artist. I asked a non-artist friend, what would you want to hear in an artist talk? And the one thing they said is, what inspires you to paint these pieces? And for me, what inspires me is of course, nature. But it's the feeling that I get in nature. I take my own photographs, and and then I crop them and do things to them. Sometimes in nature, and I learned this. I'm originally from Ohio, and I came out to CSU to go to grad school, and I noticed I'd take these walks and drives up in the mountains, and there was such a sense of power in the mountains and what I'd see, but the colors were dirt and brown and green and and blue, and so for my thesis, I switched the colors around. This was way back in the days where you had negatives and photographs, and I would look at the negatives. So I would look at the opposites. And I would turn the skies green and the mountains orange, and play with that kind of thing to get the feeling behind it. So what I do is when I look at a photograph, I like to push it quite a bit. So like this little one up here that has all the color, this is what it started at. It's just blues and not real bright, but what I do is I'll think that yellow is so cool, and it's so cool with these blue purple trees, you know. So I kind of work with that in them. Those pieces I painted on red background, and I started letting more and more of the red show through because I like the way they vibrate, you know. And they tend to possess that power in them too. And then the other paintings, the oils, are painted on a black background, except the black swan is on the red. I've worked on black for a long time because I like that instant gratification of the brushstroke. Is we put it on there and it's there, you know. It's got nice solid color. The shapes. My first idea for the show, it went through a lot of reinventions. Before the show, I had cataracts and they were getting worse and worse, and I could tell I wasn't seeing that well, and I was getting very frustrated with painting because I was trying everything. I was, you know, blowing up the photographs bigger. I've always worked with photographs like these, old school, and other artists would make fun of me. So I thought, okay, I'll try it on an iPad because light's shining through, and that didn't quite work because everything was at a different distance. The iPad was here, my palette's here, the things on the easel, and I wasn't seeing that well with that. Actually had an eye doctor that came to my studio, watched how I worked, because I kept complaining to her, I can't see, it's just not working. And she had me bring an easel, a painting, the iPad, and how I set it up. And then she tested my eyes relating to that, and she prescribed upside down bifocals. And she said that they're never going to understand this. So when her assistant put in the prescription, she goes, call them and let them know this isn't a mistake. And those worked for a little while, but then they got, I don't know, they weren't working either. So anyway, the first idea I had was to create, I was thinking what my sanctuary is, and my sanctuary was my studio is my sanctuary. That's where I feel most at peace. That's where I feel most creative. Um, that's where I feel like I can just be myself and not worry about what other people are going to think. It's that safe place. And when I was thinking about that, I was thinking about these shapes. And I started seeing them all over. We live just east of downtown where there's all the old English Tudors where, you've got the curved hobbit doors and all these cool curves. And if you look behind you, there's all the curves in the churches and all these things. And then I was thinking, what is my sanctuary? And to me, it's nature. It's being out in nature. It's always been trees and animals, and different ones have this story to go in them. But then the last year, I went through a time where it was time for the cataract surgery. And I was actually really excited. I was probably the only one that do you have any questions? It's like, no, I figured you knew what you were doing. Why should I? I don't know any of this stuff. If you want to ask me how to paint, fine, but you just do your job. And I ended up getting these kind of lenses that they adjust after they're in. So, but what I didn't realize what I was getting was one near and one far. And I'd never had that before. And my brain was not cooperating. I'm very grateful to my husband, Steve, for driving Miss Deb around for 5 months. um, uh, and I was getting scared. It's like my brain immediately went to, what if I can't paint again? And then I thought, well, I'll just be like George O'Keeffe and I'll get some pottery and, I'll do something. And in my artist statement, I talk about that. Art was my high school prom date. It's been with me always. It is something I thought I would grow older with, because some of you guys are in your 20s, so older with. And the thought of not having it, it's like, who am I without it? And I started realizing, okay, art's in more than what I create in painting. It's I won't say it's in cooking because that's not. Okay, it's in baking. It's in creating a garden. It's in our friendships. It's in so many different ways that we can talk about that creativity. While I was waiting for my eyes to figure themselves out, I watched a lot of Friends reruns because they were funny. And then I started doing just these little pen and inks. I realized I've been drawing trees and painting trees. I knew enough about trees. I could just sit down and just start. And I'd go for walks and I'd see different ones, and just the root systems and different parts of them would really, really interest me. So I started doing these, and if I had doctor's appointments, I'd just sit in the waiting room and just draw and just keep my hand in it. Then as they were getting a little better, I didn't feel like I felt like I was out of practice. And a friend told me at one point, you will never lose your mastery. And I said, but you know how you're told where um, you never forget how to ride a bike? Well, I did. So I knew that was a lie. um, so when she said I wouldn't lose my mastery, it's like I didn't believe her. It's like, and she kept saying, get back in your studio, get back in your studio. And I said, you don't understand how painful that is, to not be able to do what I did before, to be feeling so lost. Um, there's an artist named Kwang Ho who's out of Denver and now also lives in Pennsylvania part-time. And I listened to a podcast that he did. He said this line where I've done all these things and now I just want to get lost. And I thought, that is so profound. Now that I'm coming out of being lost, it's like, I never want to go back there again. So even though it's profound, you got to realize that as an artist, we're going to get lost. As an artist, we're going to have um, moments of lots of moments of doubt. I mean, that's daily. But also those artist blocks. What that artist block is just fear. It's just, that is what it is. It's that fear getting in your way. It's that ego getting in your way, telling you you're not good enough anymore. And sometimes you listen to it, and sometimes you're strong enough not to. So I started doing little things on crappy paper. It's I don't have to make a big commitment here. I can do little line drawings, and it's like, oh, that felt good. Now I'll wait till tomorrow. um, and um, and you know, like, this is when my eyes weren't doing that great, but it felt good just to do something. Um, um, and then, you know, there's another little one. They were getting kind of dark, and I tried different colors. I tried different papers. I finally felt like I could go to work on a bigger painting. Um, the first three I did are not in here. Well, one is under that one. um, you know, and it was trying to find my way back. And I had a very good friend that I was working on this one for like several months, and it just wasn't working. And I was remembering what I used to do in college, where I would build up layers. And so I thought, I'll go back and I'll start there. I'll start where that was. And it felt like trying to find myself again. Who am I now? You know, um, part of that too is just getting older. I'm 68 now, and it's like, what does that mean? People are retiring. I don't want to retire. I want to keep going. I want to keep doing this. How do you explain that to somebody that says, well, are you traveling? No. I travel to the backyard and go in my studio. um, and um, and it's just like, I want to stay relevant. And for a while, I was feeling like, am I disappearing? You know, there's so many amazing artists coming up now, and they're just incredible. And it's like, how do I keep up? And then I realized I don't have to keep up with anyone but me. You know, I don't have to do this for anyone but me, except I want to communicate things that I am feeling that I think other people are feeling too. That is one of my big goals. So I forget where I was going with all that. Side trip. Finding myself again, yeah. So I did that one back there, that tall, skinny one, and the image was here. Okay. um, of that one. But it was laying down on the floor like this. And all of a sudden I saw it as a big old tree. And that's where that came from. Um, and I'm really proud of that one, because that one isn't really working from a photograph. It's working from this sense of creating this proud big tree that had been there for so long, hundreds of years, um, and the life that is still in it. I like to, lately I've gone on a kick painting trees that are laying down. They look like a boneyard. The bark's all off of them, and they're smooth and bleached white, but they're still there, and they still have a purpose. They're homes to birds and bugs and all that kind of thing. Um, so maybe that's what I'm trying to talk about in these. I noticed a lot of my drawings were of the tree trunks, and maybe that's where I'm at in this stage in my life, is that trunk that's solid. I know who I am. I know where I'm rooted, and maybe I'll work my way up to the canopy at some point. um, yeah, but it, it took me a while to get um, to to feel myself come back. Um, and for all of us artists, I think we go through this many times in our art career. I mean, I've been painting and doing this for 50 years. So, um, I get inspired by new artists coming out with their enthusiasm. And I think I'd lost that enthusiasm. I'd lost that drive. Um, I lost that sense of wonder, which is so important for me in my art. If I don't have that sense of wonder, how do I create these things that are about that? So a lot of it was reconnecting to that too. I find it very. I like Gandhi mentioned it's like a portal. So however that means to you, whether it's church, whether it's nature, whether it's spirituality, whether it's the universe, but it's that sense of sacredness. Um, and I was telling somebody, I once had this lady said, your work doesn't just draw me in, it comes out and gets me. So I want to pull you into these sacred spaces. Um, I had a guy come and see the work. It was a friend of mine was hosting him, and she has a lot of my work in her house. And he was from Singapore, and he saw my work there, and he wanted to meet me. So I said, "Well, come here." And really interesting man. He had this little notebook with him. He had come to California to do workshop with coffee. I don't know if he was a coffee guy, but a very spiritual man. And he kept he had his little journal with writings and sketches, and we sat and we talked for quite a bit. And um, hearing that he lives in Singapore but goes to Bali a lot, and in Indonesia, and all these places he had traveled, and the people he'd met, and just a really neat guy. And we're sitting in here talking, and he saw the black swan, and he said, "So, have you seen black swans?" And I said, "No, I haven't really seen any in person." And he said, in Singapore, there's a park, and it's got would it be a flock of black swans, I guess, live there. And he goes, and before I left, I picked these up from home, because he was going to be here for 65 days, is what his visa was. Um, I didn't know who were they for, but I knew they were for someone. And it was a feather from a black swan. And there were other things. He said that he gets these he'll get these things that don't fit him, but he knows it's meant for someone else, and he remembers what was said to him, and he will pass it along. So that happened, and then that morning I had been somewhere, and I go to get in my car, and I had 11 minutes left on the meter. And I thought, that's interesting, 1-1. And then when I left him, I got to the meter, and it was 11 minutes, and it's like, whoa, what's that mean? And I guess I found out later that's kind of the higher level for wisdom, or angels are around, and all this stuff. And creating all these works felt very spiritual. The owl piece, I've always loved painting owls. So Steve and I are having breakfast at the table, and we're both on our phones. And I'm going, this is ridiculous. We need to get off our phones. So I put mine down, and I look out the window, and that owl was right out the window in a tree. And I'm going, oh my God, Steve, look! And it's so we're watching it, and then we had to leave, and came back, and it was still there. And so I had sent my brothers a picture of it and said this was in the backyard. And my oldest brother calls me up, and I've been thinking I should name this owl something, because I name everything. And I was thinking something strong and bold, and the name that came up to me was Malcolm, and I go, no, that was my dad's name, and that seems kind of weird to name owl Malcolm. Well, I just sent the photo to my brothers. My oldest brother calls me, and he goes, that must be Dad sending you a message. And I go, why would he do that? And he goes, well, this is the 20-year anniversary of his passing. So yeah, once you get into all this, it's just like, okay. And I do think there is a lot of that happens around us if we're open to it. All these messages and signs and things that we're not alone here. We are surrounded by whatever that gets us through these times, and it's just you put one foot in front of the other and keep going. And all this work was created in the last 8 or 9 months. And at one point I was going to tell Abby, I'm not sure I can do this, because it took me so long to get to the point to paint. And I also gave myself grace, and I didn't want to kill myself creating all this. That's not the point. I'm trying to find that balance between work life and have time with friends, and have time with the garden, and have time with the husband and the animals. The animals almost came first, but then I saw you, and it's like, so yeah. So anyway, thank you all.